This is why you should spend more time studying in your car. Hi, everybody. My name is Joaquin Revello. I'm a current UPenn Wharton dual degree engineering sophomore, and I make these videos to help students, especially my brother and sister, with the IB Diploma, with study skills, and with achieving excellence in high school and for the rest of your life. In this video, I'm going to be talking about why you should actually spend more time studying in your car. All right, so hear me out on this. This started out roughly when I was back in high school a few years ago. There was one day where I had a huge exam to prep for the next day, and I was pretty stressed out. I had a bunch of things to do. I needed to catch up on some content. Long story short, it was going to be a grind. All right. Normally I don't do this, but this was an exception. I had a social event earlier. Some things messed around. I made a mistake. Long story short, I needed to grind. So what exactly did I do? Okay. I started working at my normal desk, except every 30 minutes or so, my mom would come in and ask me something. Okay. Now, while I love speaking with my mom, at that moment in time, it was a distraction, right? It pulled me away from a state of flow, which is key. That state of focus, that ability for you to reach states of concentration with your work is a fundamental skill that most people don't emphasize. Yet it's crucial for your development, your productivity, and your overall achievement. So instead of just sitting down and continue doing work after getting distracted a few times, not only by my mom, but also other people who were walking in, I decided to get into my car, drive all the way over there, like literally a 2 minute drive to a nearby park. I parked in right behind one of those trees, and I just sat there and kept doing work. That was actually one of the most productive 2 hours of my entire life. Why? Because I didn't have that distraction. And essentially what I'm advocating here, okay, is not necessarily to spend your time studying cars, but to realize number one, what pulls you out of distraction, and number two, that your objective when you sit down to do work, which I like to call sprints, right? When you sit down to sprint on your most important priority, your objective should be to maintain that state of flow and to make sure that nobody gets you out of that, right? Nobody or nothing, this can be non-person too, some type of distraction doesn't pull you out of that state of flow. You want to create what I like to call a bubble of silence, where any type of distraction that could possibly penetrate into your bubble of silence is repulsed. Now, you need to understand that in our modern day, in the modern society we live in, first of all, we live in an attention-seeking economy, right? Attention is the new oil, as you've likely heard, meaning that companies, social media, and the rest of it, they're all trying and they're all vibing for your attention. They're trying to get your attention as much as possible. And this manifests itself as distractions in your normal day life, right? These are notifications from social media. These are, whatever the case may be, distractions in today's society are largely predicated by people who are trying to get your attention because that's how our economy is run. So you need to create this bubble of silence essentially. And one of the biggest things about distractions that you need to understand in our modern day, and I believe there was a study done, I think it was by Microsoft, who showed that we get a digital distraction on average every 40 seconds, excuse me. It takes us on average every 40 seconds to get some type of digital distraction. And here's the crazy part. When we get distracted by said distraction, it takes us roughly 23 minutes to get back into a state of flow. 23 minutes. So if you actually do the math, right, if you get distracted every 4 seconds, but it takes you 23 minutes to get into a state of flow, that basically means that we're never able to get into that state of flow, get into that state of focus. And again, it might be a little bit different for you. It might be more than 40 seconds. Maybe it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the case may be. But if you're getting distracted in under 23 minutes on average, which is almost the case for 95% of students, then you're basically prohibiting yourself from reaching true deep states of concentration in the work that you're doing. And while that is a problem that I'm trying to solve by helping and making these videos for everyone, it's also an opportunity for the people who take advantage of it as long as possible. So what I was doing in high school and what I learned actually, and I did that a few times after, was that by removing myself from that situation, by removing myself from that area that I was getting distracted by, it was so much easier to reach those states of flow. And it comes down to a few things. The first of which is that they can't distract you if they can't find you. Genuinely, they can't distract you, they can't find you, right? Nobody, and that can be also digital, right? If your phone is not next to you, they can't quote unquote find you because you are not you're not a, I like to use the analogy of a puppet. You're not a puppet at the end of your phone. Your phone isn't the puppeteer, right? You can put that away and remove yourself. And also physical distractions as well. You're not a puppet to the end of that puppeteer string. So essentially the point I'm trying to make, and let me put this up right here. You want to put yourself into a bubble of silence, number one, and if they can't distract you, they can't find you. All right. So a few of the things I do with this is after that, not only did I go to the car a lot often, but I also went to interesting places that people normally wouldn't go to find me, such as the library, such as maybe there's a office in your school that you can go to do focused and productive work. So essentially do whatever you can to create that bubble of silence for you. Another thing I did, which was extraordinarily helpful, was that I put up a sign at the front of my door that essentially mentioned that I'm doing focus work. And it gave the people that are going in essentially a time period by which to come back. And more specifically, it also gave a solution by which to contact me. Because let's say there was something important that had to be done. There's two options. Number one, you shoot me a text and I'll get back to you then, which is what I do now. Or number two, if it's an absolute emergency, you can walk in, but only if it's an absolute emergency. And making that very clear with anyone who might walk in, who might distract you, who might break into that bubble of silence, sets the boundaries for you to essentially create that bubble and stay into that state of flow. Okay. Something else that I always suggest you do, and by the way, I suggest all students do this strategy right here. It's called set up office hours. And I was actually surprised by how little students actually knew of this strategy. There were a lot of students who, when I mentioned office hours, they were confused. They're like, what is office hours, etc. So office hours are essentially, and this is more of a university term, it's when, let's say you want to go talk to the professor. If I walk into my professor's office at a certain period of time, he might not be in the office, he might be doing some work, or simply he might not want to be disturbed. So what we do instead in university is we set up office hours, meaning that the professor or the TAs have a set period of time during the day or during the week where I can walk in and ask questions. You can do something very similar to with your own life as a high school student. And it might not be as overt as having like a period of time where people might walk in. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is instead have a period of time in which you allow yourself to put out the fires, right? Have office hours for your email. Set like maybe 2 blocks during the day, 1 block in the morning, 1 block in the afternoon, and maybe 1 block at night where you're going to check email or you're going to check your text. And then stay disciplined to those hours. Instead of just checking text or email at whim, you can check it during those hours. And that allows you to essentially not have the burden of wanting to pick up your phone during the periods in which you're supposed to be doing focus flow. All right. Because again, the main objective with these sprints and sitting down doing work is to eventually reach a state of flow. Because if you're able to reach a state of flow consistently, and it's challenging at first, but if you're able to reach a flow consistently, you're going to be able to harness a huge array of benefits that come with that. The One of the biggest ones is that not only will you get more done, but you'll also be more creative, you'll feel better, you'll get more productive output, you'll get multiple tons of benefits in all aspects of life when you just reach states of flow. All right. So doing that allows you and gives you that freedom to reach that state of flow. And something else I do very often with this is a lot of the distractions might actually come from your mind. So what I do now, and I actually have one right here, is I have my journal, and every single time I get distracted, or I get, okay, there's two things to this. Every single time I get distracted, I write that down. And then after the flow session ends, I go through and I scheme and plot things that I can do to remove that distraction. And that's number one. The second thing that oftentimes pulls me out of flow are my own thoughts or my own things that are going on in my own brain, right? New ideas, maybe new initiatives, new things I got to check on, new to-do lists, whatever the case may be. There are things in your ideas, new thoughts that can pull you out of that state of flow. And most people actually don't anticipate those, but they are definitely prevalent. So what I do before I sit down to do work is I actually just write down everything in my brain, get all of that, pluck into a piece of paper, and now I can go and into my state of flow knowing, like I can go into a state of flow knowing that I have all of my best ideas, anything that I was wondering about, anything that I might be stressed about, I have that all on a piece of paper and I can only focus in on the one thing at a time. And I really like this saying that the human brain is not a memory machine. Instead, it's a idea generation machine, meaning that your brain really is just coming up with new ideas. But the human brain is not actually designed to remember things. Does it have a memory compartment? Absolutely. But remember that I think it was Elon Musk who brought this up in an interview, and I agree with it 100%. But your brain is looking for ways to forget things as fast as possible, right? If there's something that is useless, if there's something that is never utilize in your own life, your brain is looking to remove that information. So there's always this underlying fear that you might forget something. And that fear might actually pull you out of a state of flow, right? Because you're going through flow and you have this background, essentially background noise, knowing that you need to remember something. So write it down beforehand. You won't be pulled out of flow. And then I'll wrap up with this. Find a place where you can reach that state of flow. Find a place where you can bubble yourself in, right? Create a bubble of silence. If you've ever seen The Social Network, there's a scene called Wired In, right? There's the coder, and then he says, I'm wired in. He's fully wired into the code. There's nothing else. And in computer science, there really is much truth to that because you understand how multiple dependencies, multiple variables play into each other. And if you break a state of flow, you might actually forget the relationship between those. So be wired in, stay focused for 40, 45, 50 minutes, as we talked about in another video, in another podcast episode, and ultimately build that barrier in which you're able to reach a state of flow, that bubble of silence. You can do so with your car. You can do so by going somewhere where nobody can reach you. And you can also do so by clearing your mind beforehand. I hope this video helped. Go ahead, apply these concepts. And that's really by the way, that's the entire point of why I make these videos, to give you the concepts you need to apply this right away into your own life, right? Hopefully you now have a bunch of ideas of things you could be doing, spending your time on. Go ahead, write a few of those down, maybe write 3 things that you learned from this video and start doing them right now, okay? Get off YouTube, start doing those right now. Get off the podcast, start doing those right now. And I'll see you in the next episode when it does release. Have a good rest of your day and stay productive. We'll talk soon.